right now under the snowy skies. Um, we are coming to the close of 2020. And boy, what a year. The series has been amazing. I've had so many cool, incredible thought leaders and guests sharing their ideas about diversity, equity, inclusion. And I'm super excited to end the year with Morris Huang joining us and talking about technology and tools for inclusion. Morris, I'm going to say go dogs to start us off because you, you got the rival Georgia school there as your background. Introduce yourself, share what you're up to, and then let's dig in on this.
Okay, sounds good. So my name is Morris Huang. I actually met Mo here through Colorado Technology Association. I think it was one of the meet and greets, and I was there representing our Center for Inclusive Design and Engineering, which is located at the University of Colorado, Denver. I'm currently postdocing there. Our center director is Dr. Kathy Bodine. She and her team have done a ton of work for people with disabilities, both physical and cognitive. And I've had a great time learning a ton there for the past 2 years. This is my start of my third year working there. And so hope to be able to make this one stick and hopefully be a good representative for the center here. So.
Well, and it feels to me like the possibilities with technology and inclusion they're mind-blowing.
Mm-hmm.
And if I think about, even just like the last 5 years, I would love to hear from an expert if you feel like it's as mind-blowing and just this whole idea about technology and tools for inclusion and what that can do in terms of opening up so many opportunities for so many people, including creating this really, really fabulous mix of diversity that I feel like before there were not insurmountable barriers, but higher barriers than there are today with technology.
Yeah, and so I think case by case. So we'll kind of go to big picture. So when you think of providing inclusivity and accessibility for a person with disability in the workplace, for example, if you don't necessarily know someone with a disability, the first things you think of are probably like, oh, wheelchair ramps, being able to have access to their desk spaces, appropriate desk heights to accommodate power wheelchairs, these sort of things. But it's honestly a lot more than that, right? There's a lot more complex situations that are involved there. And I guess I'll sort of advertise what our center does to kind of help with that, and how, like you said, technology has changed in the past 5 years to really empower individuals with disabilities. And so I guess one way to sort of think about this is, at our center, we work with assistive technology, which is technology that is specifically tailored towards individuals with disabilities. But then we also do research on the front of mainstream technologies that can be leveraged for individuals with disabilities. A great example of this, and I'm echoing some things that I picked up from our clinicians who do a lot of complex seating and mobility for people with disabilities. And they were telling me just like the voice control, right? Your voice to text, voice control of your phone, it wasn't designed for people with disabilities. It was designed for the convenience of your everyday person, maybe a busy person that's running around with their phone, or hands-free interaction with your phone while you're driving. But for individuals, say, like you said, maybe with muscular dystrophy or some sort of disability that makes it so that they cannot interact or do not have the fine motor skills to interact with their touchscreen phone, right? Now they can do some sort of voice text stuff, and this opens up tons of opportunities. Their communication becomes a lot more independent. They're able to probably even interact with softwares and do managerial positions by being able to communicate a lot more cohesively with their technology. And so So that's an example of the mainstream tech that can really help with that. On the flip side of that, I kind of want to just get in here is to say, um, a lot of the larger companies are also developing tech, that is, I guess, more along the lines of assistive tech as well. And that really helps lower costs for individuals who with disabilities. So a great example of this is Microsoft with their Xbox controller. I don't know if you saw that during this, if you watched the Super Bowl, right? The those commercials. And then Logitech also put out a ton of little switches, right, that can interface the with your switch adaptable controller. And in the past, if someone wanted to play games, right, and they wanted to use one of those controllers, I think one of those controllers would have to be heavily customized and would run them about $2,000, which is really just not money that we see individuals with disabilities necessarily always having, right? And so the Microsoft controller is $100, right? And then you've got your Logitech switch set, which runs, I don't know, something like $50, whereas normally just one of those switches would run probably around $50. So
Well,
it's
and I love like um, I hope that we're now seeing like tech and inclusion, like, right, they should just be intertwined. Like tech should be a vehicle for inclusion. Like you even
sure.
just think about Microsoft now, right? Like
Hmm.
you're talking about voice. I can open up Word, I can, have transcribe, and I don't have to be typing anything. It's
Yeah.
actually what we do to add uh, because, and I'm hoping Zoom will get there soon,
Hmm.
right? The interfaces that we have to use even for this live stream, we can't do live closed captioning yet.
Yeah.
We take the transcripts of this, load it to Microsoft, and then we create blogs that have, it'll be you and I, and then it'll be the transcription of all of this just by using that Microsoft functionality that's built in.
Hmm. Yeah.
Uh, because we know, I mean, the stats around underemployment for people with disabilities is staggering. It's
Hmm.
absolutely staggering.
It is.
So, and um, I think that there are so many possibilities that it literally benefits everybody.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, making that's another big part of what our center does too. We try to do usability related research, and um, you know, usability of products, of mainstream products runs the whole continuum in terms of benefiting everyone, right? It makes things probably just accessible for individuals with disabilities, but it also makes things easier for individuals who are not diagnosed with disabilities. So yeah, that's a great point.
I have to find this, Morris, and I have to find where it was. You and I were talking before we went live about there was a family that their son was, I think it was 10 years ago. He
Hmm.
was 18, he was graduating high school, and he had muscular dystrophy.
Right.
And they were trying to find a place where he could be an independent 18-year-old
Hmm.
and live. And the only places that they could find were for people with developmental disabilities or elderly.
Hmm.
And it's taken them 10 years, but they just opened this facility for younger people with disabilities. And what is super cool is they're starting to also partner. Um, so it's providing awesome jobs for these folks too.
Hmm.
But they're testing different technologies. They're testing different products. I guess they've tested like some Tommy Hilfiger clothing.
Mm.
Doing some testing with Microsoft on some products. And so, yes, this is going to be, um, they know that they're putting out products in the world that are going to be accessible and everyone's going to benefit from them.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I mean, the my dissertation advisor, he taught a course that was human-centered design, right? And so that's really the core of all these things. And I'd say, you know, my current boss, Kathy Bodine, she's definitely behind this as well. Inclusive design, Center for Inclusive Design and Engineering. That's literally what our center is called. So that's really a focal point where you put the person first, right? And it's actually it's great that there's facilities like that that are doing this. And I think it's something that is sometimes difficult, just executing even in the clinical settings, right? Not, ignore the business setting, right? Even in the clinical settings, there are times that there are struggles with putting the patient first or putting the client first. And there's and let me know if I'm going a little bit too much on a tangent, but I'm just thinking about all my coworkers and on some scale, I feel like I am the least qualified to speak to these things, because they have years and years and years upon of clinical experience and working with these individuals with disabilities in such close proximity, whereas I'm just really starting my career in this space. So I just wanted to point out things like, they follow a very user-centered approach when it comes to dealing with clients that come to our clinic. And some of these clients, I feel like they're just so emotional, because they feel like they're the first time that they're being heard by our clinicians, because they do such a good job of helping them find their voices and then putting that into a plan of action so that they really co-design a solution for them.
Well, and what I'm hopeful, and then we're going to sort of segue into attitudes and beliefs and some of the things, but just the initial barrier that you brought up around cost.
Yeah.
I had a niece with cerebral palsy, and I mean, just one of her communication devices was tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about, $100.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's so exciting.
Mm-hmm.
What this is opening up, just simply from a financial standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Where I can open up Microsoft Word and do some things, and things that are just, when I say like the last 5 years, it's so incredibly exciting, because if you've been somebody that has been limited, both by attitudes and beliefs, but then just sheer financial barriers, and then just things that didn't even exist,
Mm-hmm.
it is it's mind-blowing to me, and in such a positive, incredible way.
Yeah.
What the power and the potential that we're able to unleash now.
Mm-hmm.
So let's then talk about attitudes and beliefs, because I think this is something that I people that have watched this series have heard me say, like, if you want a problem solved, get a person with a disability, right? Because they're the
Mm-hmm.
original life hackers. They're having to
Yeah.
problem all day long.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but there's still this, the some of them unconscious bias, and some of them, I think, very conscious,
Yeah.
negative bias about people with disabilities in the workplace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. With regards to this unconscious bias or conscious bias, so first of all, there's the stigma of seeing individuals with certain physical disabilities, right? Or say they are non-communicative, right? Then there's the belief that, okay, maybe they're less intelligent than you are, right? Because the medium through how we communicate day to day right here is just we talk, you listen, you talk, I listen, right? And the reality is that's definitely not a marker of an individual's intelligence or ability at all. I'll tell an interesting story here. This was actually a story that Kathy, our director, told me when she was interviewing me. And so she had started out as an SLP, right, speech language therapist, and she at one point had, I think, a couple of clients who were going to be, I think, condemned to basically the I guess, asylum, right? And so because they were nonverbal, right, so they were assumed that they had mental retardation or something along those lines, right? And I think she had heard that some professor in California, I don't know if it was Berkeley or Stanford, had hacked like a TI, right? So that it could, you can use it to do some sort of simple text typewriting communication. And so there she was, like talking to him on the phone and soldering this thing, right? And and then she had this thing and she took it to those individuals who were nonverbal, and only one of them scored slightly below average, and then the rest of them were above average intelligence. And so it was at that moment she was like, wow, like technology is just such a powerful thing to be able to, help dispel this illusion of the perceptions you may have about an individual with disabilities. And I think stories like these are very, this one stayed with me because it's very impactful to, just drive home the notion when you speak with someone, your preconceived notions are really reshaped because of hearing these sort of stories, right? When I speak with someone that's nonverbal, I'm just like, all right, what's going on in their head? I want to know. Like,
Yeah.
It's
Well, and if we think about sort of how we set up workplaces, that this is the norm, right?
mhm,
This type of communication, and that is inclusive of a really narrow focus.
mhm,
With the statistics being known, 1 in 5 people, and this is just US based,
mhm.
people with disabilities, and it's probably closer to 1 in 4.
Okay.
So, and most of them, I think it's funny, right? It's always, when you think about a person with a disability, it's always a chair user, right?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Like, I can't remember what actual people with disabilities they make up, right? So, and so I think there's this idea of really just opening up our minds and our ideas about what communication looks like
Mhm.
and what we value in communication
That's
from
right.
an inclusion standpoint. Is
Mhm.
it really the idea or how the idea is conveyed? Right now, it's how the idea is conveyed, and how do we shift that focus to the idea?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure you in other talks in this series have discussed, um, and we won't go down this tangent, but I have to say this piece for my wife because she's always complaining about how she's in her design group. She suggests an idea, and then and then you know like 5 minutes later it pops into someone's out of someone's subconscious. A guy says it and they're like, oh, what a great idea. So so yeah, I completely understand that. And that's a person with a voice, right? And it's for someone who may not have a voice or may not be able to communicate through that direct medium, right? That's going to be even harder to be heard, right?
Right, unless we're putting in, we talk about the pause, right?
Mhm,
Putting in a pause for ourselves about, what's important, or, what am I doing to make sure that
mhm,
this environment that I've created in the workplace, everybody's voice,
mhm,
everybody's ideas are
yeah.
heard,
Mhm,
however we get them. I'm curious. So I loved what you shared, Morris, about just this power of stories,
mhm,
right? That how that one story stuck with you, and I think that's something that we could do in workplaces, right? Or share some of these just absolutely breakthrough stories
mhm,
about those individuals were about to be institutionalized because we hadn't taken the time. And so, what are some things that we're doing individually, collectively, even from who we're considering to even bring on our teams,
mhm.
who once those people are on our teams. I'm just wondering if there's just some really easy wins here, that we could be thinking about in terms of technology and inclusion. Yeah, because you said earlier, inclusive technology benefits everybody.
Mhm.
Are there some things that I should be thinking about as a leader or as an individual or as a teammate around technology and inclusion that should just be like, yep, this as a matter of course, we should have this?
Yeah, so technology specific, I mean, I would say um, in terms of, I guess, on the communication front, right? We already talked sort of this, speech to text sort of thing, um, or text to speech. These variances also are very useful for helping to facilitate communication. In terms of all encompassing tech, not all encompassing, but some examples of technology that really help there. Um, um, I honestly don't have a very firm grasp on this, but what jumps to my mind is um, Jim, Jim Sandstrom, who handles a lot of our accessibility setups for individuals in individuals' homes, or setting, or some of our OTs. Brian Burns, he's already retired, but he did a lot of computer access stuff with individuals, and I think a lot of these individuals just need to be set up in a space that they are able to access the computer, right? So some of the computer access softwares, right? So multiple modalities for them to be able to utilize their computers, right? So again, sort of the speech to text sort of thing, right? If typing is just not something that they're going to be able to do very conveniently,
Or
things.
if I can't read.
Mhm. Yeah,
Right?
screen readers, absolutely, for the vision, and yeah, for the vision impaired. That's extremely important. Um, there's probably I think what might be interesting is there's a lot of smart home tech out there, right? And so the smart home tech, can be a little finicky at times, but maybe if it's set up in such a way in your say your lobby or your lounge area, right? So that it's a convenience not only to your workers, your employees without disabilities, it also enables employees with disabilities to be able to access stuff.
Yeah,
So
I love that idea.
yeah.
I hadn't even thought about some of that.
Yeah,
It,
I'm thinking of outside of just the work, right? Like if they want to take a little break, right, and they want to, I don't know, somehow get access to some coffee, or they want to get access to some of the, amenities that you guys provide to all your employees. You want to make sure that's being accessible to all of the employees if possible. So
I love this, and I can't wait. Even just thinking 5 years from now, some of the things that are being done, and um, when you talk about human-centered design,
mhm.
um, seeing things like I don't know if you saw, but there was just a lawsuit for some of the first, what is it called? Virtual reality.
Oh,
Because
okay.
it,
I haven't followed that. Yeah. So what's been happening?
no closed captioning,
Oh, okay.
right? So, and that's an example of if you're designing without people from communities um, being engaged in that design process, you're going to miss things because it's not your reality. You can't see, or at least having some of these test groups to make sure. I always tell the story of when they released the first Apple Watch,
Hmm.
and they were talking about how it was the most incredible health tracker, you know, all of these things, you know, they literally had nothing about women's menstruation cycles, right? And
Mm.
pregnancy. The entire team had been men, right? So they're talking about this most incredible thing, and it's like, hold, 50% of the population, you missed it, right?
Yeah.
So I think, thinking through all of this, um, and this remaining human centered, and we talk about the power of curiosity, so
Mm.
thinking about some of these readily available technologies and tools and what we can be doing to make sure everybody's voice is included and the space is inclusive and I want to get beyond accessible,
Mm.
right? And we are, I promise, because this is probably the third time in a row I've mentioned this, how much I hate the word accommodations.
Okay.
Because it's just so like, oh, I'm going to accommodate you.
Yeah.
But beyond that, to truly inclusive.
Yeah.
I love the work, Morris, that you and the team there at the center are doing.
Mhm.
And I feel like the more we're having this conversation, and individuals that are thinking about this as a part of inclusion, right?
Yeah.
And every single one of our roles, and imagining, let's say I've got somebody, whether it's physical, we talked about
Cognitive. Yeah.
all
Mhm.
of it. What are we
Mhm.
doing to get the best ideas at the table and to create workplaces literally that everyone can thrive?
Yeah. I think from the technology standpoint, I'm just going to sort of piggyback off of what you said about VR. Um, we're looking at some trying to do research or research proposals, looking at things in that realm, AR, VR, because this sort of technology is in its adolescence, right? And so, as you know, technology, like you said, with the smartwatches and those sort of things, once some of those, or apps, right? Phone apps, phone design, software design, all of these things, once they're built a certain way, you know, and then you try to integrate accessibility options as an afterthought, it just doesn't pan out well. It typically just does not pan out well at all, right? And so, which is why um, sort of shifting the mentality and having these conversations earlier on, like especially when technology is sort of starting to hit its stride, like AR, VR, right? If you have these conversations earlier on, it's less painful later to, and
Yeah.
more effective, right, to integrate those accessibility options and make the technology inclusive. And that's what we're hoping to do. Try to do research on some of these earlier technologies in their adolescence and then offer recommendations. Okay, this is what you need to do now, right? These are some guidelines that you really need to pay attention to when you're building some sort of new app or tech that's in the AR or VR field. So something along those lines. And
Yeah.
that's the way we think. So
Well, and it's always easier at the start. It's
mhm,
always easier. And I
it
like
is.
how you said it doesn't go well.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
You're trying to bolt it on. Um, Leave me with one last truth bomb
What
about technology and inclusion that you just like, if you've got one thing that you want folks to remember from our conversation, or maybe we haven't even mentioned it yet, but just something that it's like, all right, here it is. Morris's last.
one last truth bomb, huh? Um I would say, um, I guess I will say that technology is incredible for leveling the playing field, or at least trying to bring that closer for individuals with disabilities. But at the same time, um, the technology is just technology as well. So you have to be very mindful of what your user needs as well. And so there's a lot of squishy stuff, not just this hard tech stuff, right? There's a lot of squishy soft skill stuff that's involved here. And I I'll just slip in one last little story from one of our clinicians, Eliza Goldberg. Man, she's an awesome SLP, speech and language therapist, um, and I think it was through her that she had been trying to set up a AAC, augmentative and alternative communication device for little girl, right? Tech is great, right? But then um, she what she had to pay attention to is she was trying to communicate with Lisa to the point that she wanted swear words on her AAC tablet, but she didn't want her mom necessarily to know because teenage girls communicate with their peers in a certain fashion, right? And so that's the thing, right? You need to have the technology, but you also need to understand the needs of your users in order to really make it work for them.
and not play God about what should or
Yeah,
shouldn't. It's her device.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. So,
awesome. That was such a great way to lead this. And I super appreciate you sharing your brilliance,
mhm.
everything that y'all are doing at the center. Keep it up. And all of us in this community, thanks for being a part of the Everyday Inclusion and Belonging series this year.
Mhm.
We're going to keep going next year, keep this conversation going, and everybody do the next right thing, and do your part to create a more inclusive world. Cheers.
Okay. All right. Thank you.